Hello there, everybody, and welcome to the Entertainment Headquarters, and welcome to another review. And the review we're about to look at is for the brand new Ryan Gosling film that seemed to be taking the world by storm, Project Hail Mary. So, Project Hail Mary, starring Ryan Gosling. You know, it's a film that is based on a book. The book was written by I think it's Andy Weir, if I'm correct. Yes, Andy Weir. And Andy Weir is also the same author that created the film that Ridley Scott, I believe, directed with Matt Damon, The Martian. Loved The Martian, great movie. Matt Damon's brilliant in that film, and it was one of my favourite films of that year. And what I can tell you now when it comes to Project Hail Mary, and I think it's fair to say it might be on a lot of people's top 10 list by the end of the year, because it's just a lovely, heartwarming, at times funny but serious science fiction film. And it's a film with a very serious story, but thanks to Ryan Gosling's performance in this film and the connection he has with his friend that we're introduced to, Rocky, this alien life form, it really helps build this bond between them two, and it really takes you on this very heartwarming adventure with these two characters alongside a very serious issue. So let's get into it and talk a little bit about Project Hail Mary. So Project Hail Mary is a 2026 American science fiction adventure film produced and directed by Phil Lord and Christopher Miller and written by Drew Goddard. Based on the 2021 novel by Andy Weir, it stars Ryan Gosling, who also produced the film alongside Weir, Sandra Huller, James Ortez, and Lionel Boyce. The film follows the story of Ryland Grace, a man who awakened on an interstellar spaceship with no memory of how he came to be there. And that's basically where this amazing, interesting story begins. So you have Ryland Grace, played by obviously Ryan Gosling, who he wakes up on this interstellar spaceship, and he has no memory. He's got amnesia. He then finds two fellow astronauts with him who are deceased because something's probably happened to their pods or their thing that keeps them asleep, and it went horribly wrong and they're no longer with us. And so because he has no other, body on the spacecraft with him, he then has to slowly put the puzzle together of why he's there. And that story is also put together through flashbacks. So this film is like a mixture of, real-time scenarios of what's happening with them on the spaceship at that time, and then the flashbacks of how it all began. And he is a chemistry teacher and a biophysicist. He's a middle school teacher. He's just going about his life day to day, living this very normal, very, average daily life that we all do. When disaster strikes, when it's discovered that these particles that are entering the sun are not just our sun, but all of the suns and stars in our known solar system, and is slowly killing them and wiping them off one by one. And he was sent on this mission, which he slowly gets his memory back and discovers all this through reading the logs and reading all the information that's provided on the spacecraft. He realizes why he's there, and he's there to go to the only star in the solar system that isn't affected and isn't dying, and that's why he's there. And through these flashbacks you see him communicating with different human characters. This human character, who was played by Sandra Huller, she is his commanding officer. She's like got the whole weight of the world on her shoulders. She basically is, leading all of the scientific teams around the world to find an answer to how to save our sun before it dies, because it'll be dead within 30 years. And literally, she shows no real emotion. She's very stoic. She's very straight face. Throughout the course of the movie, you didn't know if she was going to be the hero or a villain, or you just didn't know the angle she was going to go. But they do this very sweet thing with her and Ryan Gosling's character, Ryland, where there was this moment where they are on the top of this aircraft carrier having a deep conversation about things that are about to transpire. And then she ends up going into the commissary room and she begins like having a moment with the rest of the people there. And so you see another sweet side to her. So the great thing about this film is it's about human, interaction and human emotion, and how they are all dealing with this really, destructive, potentially unstoppable force that potentially is going to wipe us all out. And the fun of this movie is because the majority is of just Ryan Gosling on this spacecraft. It's just him on his own, just talking to himself, showing his emotions, really thoroughly, going through the roller coaster of emotions of what this whole situation is and the depth of this situation. And then things change, because then he is introduced to Rocky. Rocky is a little rock-like alien entity that, just like Ryan Gosling's character, Ryland Grace, has decided, he has been sent on this mission and has decided he is going to try and save his people, his planet, from the same fate as Earth. And, when they're first introduced, you don't know if Rocky's a threat, if he's an evil alien or what, but it's soon discovered that he's just like us. He's just this little caring little, person, creature, alien entity that you bond with. And the chemistry between Ryan Gosling's Ryland and Rocky is undeniable. There's just something so heartwarming about the bond and the real organic, genuine friendship that is built throughout the course of this movie between these two characters. And they go from just being strangers to friends to a team. And it's their mission to work together to save his planet and Earth. And so that is pretty much, the story in itself. And the great thing about the story is it takes the heartwarming sides of things, but it also is very serious when you see the science and you see them looking at the data of this particle that is literally sucking the life out of our sun and the suns around the solar system. And in a lot of the scientific things they talked about throughout the course of this movie, I didn't have a clue what they were talking about, but it was so intriguing, so interesting. You got fully invested in Ryan Gosling's character. You got fully invested in the mission. You got fully invested in every detail, even if you understood it or not, in this film, because you just were just invested in, were just suckered in. And it's all down to Ryan Gosling's performance. It's all down to the great cinematography. And, you know, most of the modern day blockbusters just use a blue screen and people running about, and you can tell it's CGI. You can tell when it comes to Project Hail Mary, one of the magics of this film is that they used a real size set, I would imagine. The spacecraft feels real. It feels like you're really in outer space. The color schemes within the confines of the spaceship, even Rocky's spacecraft, when you introduce, doesn't look like this big fantasy size spacecraft with blinking lights and, you know, something out of Star Wars or Star Trek. It looks like some sort of giant metallic satellite type, you know, structure. And it feels like if we were to be introduced to a real life alien, that's the kind of spacecraft I would imagine we would be introduced to. And it's all down to the creative writing of Andy Weir. It's all down to the creative minds of the two directors, producers, and the craftsmanship of, you know, the people behind the scenes that have put this film together. And on top of great sets and using real, you know, puppetry, because believe it or not, Rocky, for as much as I thought he was a CGI, you know, rock alien, he's actually a puppet and animatronic combined. Which when I first heard that, I was kind of very skeptical. But apparently, when it comes to Rocky and came to Rocky and operating him, it took 8 puppeteers at a time to operate him, to get him to move about, to get him to roll about in that giant sphere that you can see on screen. And I just found that really fascinating and amazing, the craftsmanship that went into making this film. And I think that's why I thoroughly enjoyed this film. It wasn't just a flashy CGI, you know, film. You know, it was a film that used a lot of practical effects, and it used a lot of different shades of lighting. Even there were shades where, you know, there was a certain point in the movie where there's an accident that happens, boom, and you see the window of the spacecraft and you see the shadows of light going around the spacecraft as the spacecraft's kind of rolling about in outer space. And it felt generally realistic in that, Christ, he's really in outer space and that's really happening. And so it's that kind of thing that propels this film to stand out for the positives. Like even this shot where he's on the top of the spacecraft trying to collect something, and you look at, you know, the surface of this planet and it just the different shades of color and the different blinding colors of light that pass him by felt so realistic, so genuine, so authentic. And I believe what they did with this shot is they built that entire rig of the outer of the spaceship, had Ryan Gosling on wire, and then there's not a green screen, it was actually a big LED screen where they showcase the actual planet surface. And so with the camera angles and the different shades of lighting that they used against that scene, it generally makes it look so real and so authentic that I was blown away. So the magnitude of the craftsmanship that they've put into making Project Hail Mary, even though it's not a big flashy film, it's a science fiction film that's very grounded with bits of humor, but it's very heartwarming. The plot was great. The build up with the friendship and the bond and the chemistry between Ryan Gosling and this little, you know, creature that he makes, and like the scientific knowledge that you're introduced to, that was mind blowing. Just a great film in general, and it's a family friendly, all round good film. And I would recommend anybody while it's in theatres to see Project Hail Mary in theatres, because I generally feel it's one of those films that when you go into it like I did, I was very skeptical, didn't know if I would see it or not in theatres, but I went into this film and I left feeling very, happy and, full of emotions. And that's what I wanted going into this film, and hoping I'd get into this film, but was very skeptical. But it's doing very well at the box office. It's the only non-sequel original film that in its opening weekend in many years made approximately 80 something million. Then over the weekend it made over nearly 150, nearly 200 million, and it's still going strong its second week into theaters. And that's proven the point that originality in original filmmaking and original storytelling is what getting people interested, not sequel, reboot. And that is the magic of also Project Hail Mary. The only negative I see with Project Hail Mary, first glance, it's on for 2 hours and 40 minutes. And I feel as if there's some of the storytelling that they could have shortened. Like there were aspects, like I see where they're talking about the science of, this particle entering the sun and how they were going to handle it, and trying to figure out how to, deal with, the aspects of like different, things within in the story. I think they could have shortened. I love the flashbacks element where you show him as this, chemistry teacher, gets selected to like be a part of this project. His interaction with the other human cast and characters shows the human side of the story in him, and shows you the depths of the seriousness of the situation. So yes, it was just a fun film all round for me. If I'm going to rate Project Hail Mary for its craftsmanship, for its uniqueness, for its heartwarming story, and for the amazing performances of both Ryan Gosling and the character of Rocky, I'm going to give this a strong 9 out of 10. And one other thing, there was a film that came out last year on Netflix called Spaceman, which also featured this lovable little alien creature. But I didn't leave that film with the same feelings of depth. It was a great, unique film because you got to see Adam Sandler playing a serious character and playing a serious role. But it just didn't capture as the way Project Hail Mary has. And and that's the beauty of Project Hail Mary. It's a unique film. It's a film that's original. It's based on a book that was well written. And everyone involved has done an amazing job. So like I say, 9 out of 10 for me for Project Hail Mary. Let me know down in the comments below what you thought of Project Hail Mary. Was it a film you thoroughly enjoyed? Did you love the aspects of the science? Did you love the grounded, storytelling? Did you like the camaraderie of, Rocky and Ryland? What did you think of, of the amazing, practical effects throughout the course of this movie? Let me know in the comments below. Keep on enjoying your movies. Keep on enjoying all things entertainment. And as always, I'll catch us all at the next one.